Hey guys, Neff here, and I have a really cool lock for you today. We're looking at the Goal Z 7-pin pin tumbler lock. It's out of Japan. I'm really excited about this for a few reasons actually. It's a new addition to the black belt list, and it is the first black belt lock that I ever picked without any sort of progressive pinning or having messed with a previous model related to that lock in the past. So having no experience, I was able to pick this lock, and it's something that it was a goal I set for myself, so I was really excited about it. Now, that being said, I've only seen pictures of the inside of it, and this thing has some really wild pin designs. It has counter milling, it has over milling, lots of really cool stuff going on, which would make sense considering it is a standard pin tumbler lock, but somehow made it onto the black belt list. And that is exactly why, with all of that extra stuff going on with it. So we'll go ahead and get this bad boy locked up in the vise, talk a little bit more about what's inside of it, and we'll open it up together today. Let's see how it goes. Alrighty guys, we got her locked up. Let's take a look at the key and the bitting. As you can see, I have two really high cuts, a really high cut in the back, some dips in the middle. Not bad on the bitting for this one. Works like a charm. Oop, looks like I gotta tighten it a little bit in the vise there. There we go. And we'll be using this small twisted wiper insert. Been using that since I started. And then this medium hook seems to be my favorite hook these days, cut out with my laser. So let's give it a shot without hitting the camera. So I was never able to pick this counterclockwise, which sucks because that's actually the way I wanted to do it. We'll be picking it clockwise today. Lots of tension, as you can see. And I'll try and talk you through what I'm doing here. With the counter milling and over milling, there's lots of extra hitting on pins that may have already been set. So we're going to start on 3 and 4. That was 3. I'm going to hit 4. Might have heard that click. So those are the standard pins in here, or at least I believe that's the case. 3 for sure I think is a standard because it obviously hits it into a little bit of a false set there. 1 just had a light click, and it's going to have a little bit more going on with it here. Eventually some counter rotation. Just making sure my placement's good. So another click, and now we'll have some counter rotation, I believe. Yep, counter rotation. All right, so it just went springy in there. Now why is that? Because 3 dropped. Now we're back. So I'm going to go back and check 1, and that pin is floppy. I'm not going to try and push it anymore, even though it probably could. Probably needs to go some more because we pushed 4 up a little bit too because that dropped. Because with the way the milling works in these, there's lots of extra picking, but there is a chance for overset. I'm using very heavy tension unless I don't need to. That was kind of the secret to figuring this lock out. So this is 7 pin. Now I'm going to be working on 5, 6, and 7 for a minute. So I'm back at 7, 6, 5. All right, so we're going to start with 5. Now, I'm going to need to ease up on the tension. Okay, it bumped up a little bit. We're going to go to 6. Lots of tapping. Okay, 6 went up. Sometimes just changing the position of my hook on the pin itself helps because of getting caught in the counter milling. If you just change the angle, sometimes you can click it out of there without having to release anymore. I'm back on 5. Okay, bumped up again. 5 and 6, feeling pretty good. We're on to 7 now. Now, if you recall, 7 is a very high lift. So, okay, we got it to release, but I lost some of my false set. Could be 5 or 6. So I hit 6, got some of it back. Let's hit 5. 5 clicked. Not much core movement. Now, you see, I'm still hitting on 5 and 6 right now while they're set. Just really trying to make sure they're in place. Let's check 7 now. Seven feels like it's going to need to move a little bit more, but I'm still heavy on the tension. So 5, 6, and 7, the pins themselves feel floppy. I noticed with this, before I explain, I'm going to hit 3 and 4 again. So going 1, 2, 3. 3, and then There's 4, 3. All right, now they don't feel like they move, but sometimes you need to make sure stuff's bumped up. So I'm gonna check 1 here. Okay, now if you heard it click a little bit, I may have just pushed that out of the over milling. Pin is still floppy. Let's check 2. The reason I'm being so nice with 2 is because 2 is kind of where the lock likes to finish, so I try not to be too crazy with it. There is a chance of overset with 1 and 2. Alright, so 2. That might be there. Let me check 5, 6, and 7 yet. So at the end here, getting them picked out of the overmilling, I'm calling it the overmilling. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. So 7 just gave me a little bit click and some core movement again. I knew there was a little bit more. So you keep going and going and going as each thing gets set, and you might find that there's just a little bit more to set. I'm pushing on 5 and 6 just to make sure there's not a little bit more. What I ended up needing to do was just being way heavier on the tension, and almost every lock that I've had trouble with, that was kind of my solution to it, was, hey man, you need to be a lot heavier on the tension, except where you're not. So it sounds kind of dumb, but you know, when I'm testing things, being heavy on the tension helps because it stops me from dropping other stuff. So 1 still feels set. Now with this one, a standard jiggle test doesn't really work for me. You can see how hard I'm being on it, so I could go nice and easy and be jiggle testing, but to be honest, I don't feel as much that way as if I'm just really hard on it. Basically, what I'm feeling for is no mush. When they get hard in this false set and hard to move at all, they're pretty much set, and if you feel like a little bit of give, not a jiggle test, but like almost a sponginess, which you can only tell if you're really railing on it, that actually tells me that there's a little bit more to set. I don't know if that helps anybody, but that's just the best way I can explain it. Alright, we're going to mess with 2 and see if that pops the lock now. Okay, so I got the click on 2. That if I had picked everything out of the overmilling, that would have just opened, so I obviously did not. That's going to mean I have an issue with 5, 6, and 7. Usually it's 7, because 7 is such a high lift, I don't always get it completely picked. Okay, I hit 7, and it actually clicked and moved the core more, so let's keep checking stuff. 6 and 5 are good. 4 is good. 3 is good. 2 feels pretty good. Let's check 1. That was just skipping off the pin there. Because it's such a high lift, I actually have to have my pick almost completely vertical. So now, because I can't really feel any issues with any of the pins, I'm probably going to have to ease up on tension, and I'll either end up dropping something or finally getting something in place. And it still might be related to 7. Ooh, I felt something on 6. Maybe. No. You can see how hard I'm just railing on the pins here. Okay, that was 7. It actually pulled the core back to click again. And that was 6. We're still good. We haven't. Doesn't feel like we've overset anything. Two and 1 still feel good, so what's gonna end up, there we go. I had to bump 3 just a little bit. So now you can see what we got here. We'll go ahead and get this gutted, and I'll go a little bit more in depth once we can see it in person. Alrighty guys, let's see what we got here. So first of all, you'll notice that every single, every single key pin is, I guess spooled is what it'd be called. So if you overset, you're going to end up having that. Let me take off that autofocus. Yeah, so if you overset, you're gonna end up getting stuck, which a lot of people say, oh, it's really tough to overset in this lock, but I had issues with overset, you know, with testing out and what I was trying to learn. So it looks like I was right, and my buddy Duck even told me this as well, is that 3 and 4 chambers would be my standard pins. So it looks like they all have a hole kind of dug out, a recess in that the spring goes into. That looks to be in every single pin. So one is, you can see, let me see if I got the right direction. So as it's going up, that was the first click, and then I'm not really sure what the second click was, because I usually got a click and then the spooling that you can see there. So that's what would be the counter rotation, and then it would let it go. And then there was the overmill issue to finish it out the rest of the way. Same thing in number 2 here, except a much smaller end spool. So that's why I had that like one harsh click at the end there, where I said, oh, you know, 2 usually sets the lock free. It didn't, but I still did have to get that last click. 3 and 4 were the standards. 5, same kind of deal. This one looks to be a steel one though, so I don't know why they put brass up front and steel in the back as drill protection, but is what it is. Looks like 6 is the exact same size as that spooled type. I don't know if I would call these that. Yeah, I mean, they are spooled. So, and 7 is the same thing, except because it's such a short pin, it's a lot longer there. So it looks like they also size their drivers according to the key pin, and to balance those stacks out, you can see there, it almost matches the key perfectly like that. Isn't that cool? So there's that. Let's take a look at the plug. That's where all the big magic happens here, which is kind of cool. So you can see if you look at the side of the key pin chambers, we've got our counter milling. I'm feeling in to see, so there's a solid click under that, and then this is the over milling. So that creates a, first you have the counter milling where the pin gets caught and it gets really caught up under there. Then you pick it over, and then you've got this over milling right here that creates a shelf for where you have to pick it again to get it out of that. And you can see it's all milled flat like that. Maybe that's the over milling too. I'm not sure what milling it flat like that does, but to me it feels like counter milling under, then over milling, and then whatever this milled flat is. So that could just be part of the plug design. These side parts here are one of the saving graces to the lock as far as making it a little bit easier to work with. You have one here, and what that takes is these springs and ball bearings. And the cool part about that is it wants to align the plug and make it go back to perfectly straight, and that helps with kind of a almost like float picking without having to float pick, which is super cool. I actually just dumped all the springs out, so that sucks. Give me one sec here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Perfect. And you'll see that they just use very small springs. So yeah, so you've got those ball bearings that make it want to go back to perfect. So when you're in that false set, the ball bearings want to reset back, and that, so it pulls it back so that you don't have to float pick the plug to do that. I actually thought about, you know, if I got this lock figured out pretty well and maybe bought another one, maybe pulling those out and then having to float pick it, just add some challenge, but that'll be down the road a little bit. This is a pretty tough lock actually. So I think that's about all there is to know. Let's look inside the cylinder itself here. Looks like nothing special there. So there's where the ball bearing sits in place. I actually don't see one on the right. Yeah, I do. I just couldn't see it through the camera lens, but it's there. So that's the spot for where the ball bearings hit. And I think that covers it all. I appreciate you guys watching. Please like and subscribe so I can do more for you. I'm ready to hear any comments, questions, suggestions, or feedback about it. Y'all have a great night.